Welcome to the copy-paste portion of my minion build. You're going to start off with putting 2 points into Reap. And Reap will not be on your bar. That will allow us to move on to the next node. We're going to put 1 point into Blight. Blight will not be on your bar. You're going to put 3 points into Hued Flesh. Moving downwards, we're going to have maxed out Corpse Explosion. 1 point obviously in Enhanced Corpse Explosion, and the bottom node Plague Corpse Explosion. We're going to have Skeletal Warrior Mastery maxed out. We're going to have Grim Harvest and Fueled by Death both maxed out also. Moving down our node, we're going to have 2 points into Death's Embrace, maxing out Skeletal Mage Mastery, grabbing all points into Amplified Damage. We're going to have 1 point into Decrepify, 1 point in Enhanced Decrepify, and 1 point in the Lucky Hit node of Decrepify. Moving more downwards, we're going to have 1 point into Corpse Tendrils, 1 point into Enhanced Corpse Tendrils, and 1 point into Plagued Corpse Tendrils, which is our main source of vulnerability for the minions. We're going to also put 3 points into maxing out our Necrotic Carapace for our Fortify. Moving more south down our node, we're going to put all 3 points into Golem Mastery, all points into Army of the Dead. Every single point in the minion nodes, we're going to max all 4 of those out. We're then going to put our final point into Callan's Edict as our ultimate. And that ends our copy-paste portion of the minion build. The Book of the Dead. The first thing you want to do for your Skeletal Warriors is use the Reapers. They will be your main source of corpse creation, so it's really imperative to have this specific point for your Reapers. The second thing you want to do for your Skeletal Mages will be Cold, with the secondary node for their increase of vulnerability on enemies if you cannot get specific ones with your Corpse Tendrils, or it's a big specific type mob boss or a teleporting one, so this is very, very useful. The third one, you want to get the Blood Golem if you want to push higher Nightmare dungeons because of the damage reduction it takes. It's super useful. But if you want damage and stun and continued vulnerability, and you're not looking to push higher Nightmare dungeons, you can use the Iron Golem. I use this for a very long time. You can also use it with your Iron Golem Slam makes enemies vulnerable. This is also a very good choice, but if you want to push higher Nightmare dungeons, you're eventually just going to default to the Blood Golem and its damage absorption for yourself. And that ends it for the Book of the Dead. Aspects and uniques. These are the two things we will be talking about in this portion of the build guide. The first aspect you'll be getting will be Aspect of the Grasping Veins for our Corpse Tendrils. This will go on our amulet for max value. Followed by Unyielding Commander's Aspect. This will go on our weapon. It is very important for this to go on your weapon, one-handed or two, depending on what are you running, but considering this build, you'll be running a one-hander and a shield for your offhand. So it's important that this goes on your main hand. Your third aspects followed that will be Aspect of the Reanimation. Anything after the Unyielding Commander's Aspect, you can put on whatever you want. They're interchangeable. The fourth aspect will be Bloodgetter's Aspect, followed by Coldbringer's Aspect for your Cold Mages. After that will be Hardened Bones, Vicious Aspect, then Aspect of the Protector. These are all the aspects that you need for this build. It is imperative that you get Aspect of the Grasping Veins if you do want to see those big damage numbers. This build also contains 2 separate uniques. First unique that is very important for this build, Howl from Below. This is one of the major uniques that will make our corpse explosions do major damage and actually have them chase the enemies rather than having to be right on top. The second unique, not as needed, but this is a very good damage increase for our minions, will be Ring of the Mendelin. This gives our minions a lucky hit chance to do increased damage. The higher the item power, the more damage your minions will do. I think up to 800 item power that I've seen goes up to about 16,000 damage per lucky hit, and that is very, very good. This ends our aspect and uniques portion of the build guide. It's time for everybody's favorite thing to do in Diablo, Paragon Boards. This is mostly going to be a copy paste, to be honest, unless you want to go your own way. This is completely up to you. But if you want to follow suit, I'll be going from each board, going from glyph to glyph to glyph. So if you just want to copy paste, you can pause in between sections and just mindlessly click that circle button until you get what I got. All right, here we go. Paragon board 1, first glyph socket is going to be control. Give everybody a moment to look at what I've gotten. Going to number 2, which is going to be your first minion board, which is Cult Leader. We're going to be skipping out on Armor Clad node. Give everybody a moment to look and appreciate the beauty of this. Going to move on to, actually before we move on to 3, the second glyph socket is going to be Dead Razor. This is going to be amazing for our Custody rare node and our Overlord rare node for damage reduction and minion damage. Going to board number 3, we're going to go to Hulking Monstrosity. On this board, we're going to be skipping Flesh Horror, and our third socket is going to be Amplify. This is going to be for our golem's damage and armor from the surrounding nodes, Mutation and Miscreation. This is also very good because we're always going to have our enemies cursed. The next board we're going to be moving to, which is on the board that I am right now, which is going to increase vulnerability damage amazingly, is our legendary node Flesh Eater. Considering we're consistently using corpses, you're always going to have this 40 damage bonus. The fourth and final glyph socket is going to be Exploit. With our corpse tendrils exploiting everything around us, well, technically making everybody vulnerable, excuse me, this is going to increase our damage on said vulnerable targets. On this node, we're going to be talking about what to get and what to skip. We're going to be skipping rare node Poison Condition. We're going to be actually grabbing Stifle, but the way we're going to get Stifle is we're going to move down 1. We're going to do this for the critical strike damage, so we get these 2, skipping the injured mobs rare magic nodes, and we're going to go grab this for an additional 15% critical strike damage. We're going to be skipping rare node Recuperate. We are going to be grabbing Collar. This is mostly going to be for our minions and ourselves. You know those damage reduction minions or minions you get to 35% and you're considered injured and they just won't die? This is going to help a lot. Considering this is also a lucky hit type build, you're going to be grabbing up to 1, 2, these 3 magic rare nodes and the last rare node, totaling up to 25% chance to execute an enemy under 35%. For the next node after this, if you have some extra points, we're going to be moving to, I believe, I think it's Scent of Death. It really doesn't matter which node you go into here because you're just going to be grabbing one rare node, for example. If it has like crit or damage to a specific enemy, yeah, here it is, critical strike damage. So you'll just like rotate this and then you'll grab the critical strike damage rare node. And that'll be kind of like the more so ending of your Paragon points. But once I get to there, I will probably send an updated picture in the video. That'll be all for the Paragon version of the board. I'll go through them very slowly just for our little pausers and copy pasters. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comment below. And that about ends it. There you go. There's the Paragon board for the build. Welcome to the armor building portion of the build guide. I will be explaining what to get and what stats you should be looking out for. The offensive stats you want to be looking out for would be crit damage, lucky hit, and vulnerability damage. Other damage types that you could replace vulnerability damage with and or lucky hit chance with include stun enemies and also CC'd enemies, or slowed. So crowd control and slowed, they're both acceptable for this build. For defensive stats, you want to be looking for life, Damage reduction, like flat out. Armor is acceptable. Close enemies is also acceptable. I'm going to be honest, resists are basically useless considering that they talked about it earlier on the dev broadcast, and that won't be fixed for quite some time, to be honest. So you just want to be looking out for like max stats, like life and defense reduction, or defense reduction to close enemies more so, because with this build with your minions, you're just going to be on top of the minions the whole entire time. Specific itemization you want to be looking out for is, as you've noticed, pants. You want to get up to +3 or +4 corpse explosion for the build. I'm trying to get better pants to get +4 corpse explosion. For the amulet specifically, you want to be looking for +3 to corpse skills, and or I don't know if it goes up to +4. I'm not entirely positive yet. And also plus to amplify damage. That is your curse skill, and it goes up from 9% to 15%. No, I believe 9 to 15%. We can actually check right now. We go to skills, amplify damage. Ooh, it went from 9 to 18%. So yeah, it doubled it. So it was really, really good. So those are the two things you want to look out for, are pants and amulet, for very specific skill damage increase or passive increase. So you want to look out for those. Other than that, it's more so cookie cutter. Like I said before, crit damage, vulnerability damage, lucky hit, and they can be interchangeable. For example, like I said, slowed enemies. The gems you want to be using will be critical strike damage to vulnerability enemies. For your armors, you want to get maximum life. And also including the shield. I need a better shield, but you get the gist of things. And that about ends the itemization portion of the build. All right, welcome to how the build plays out. If you've made it this far, you want to see how you play this build, what the damage is, and here we go. I opened up a VOD from earlier today, and basically what you want to do is go around, curse the enemies, situate yourself up with your minions buff with the W for the damage and the heal. You then want to corpse tendril to suck them all in, and then you corpse explosion with your mobs tanking. So the whole point of this build is to create a whole bunch of bodies on the floor, followed by sucking them all in with corpse tendrils, increasing your critical damage and your crit for those hit by the corpse tendril, and just blowing everything up to smithereens. So this is like the whole point of the build. Your minions tank everything, they CC everything for you, you set up, then boom, huge number, boom! And that is basically the whole portion of this build. It's just very important to keep your minions alive with the heal. They are very vulnerable to cold damage, blast wave damage, and basically almost any form of CC. You just gotta be very careful. But you can destroy almost anything hitting between right now 400 to 600,000 damage. This build is very, it's come a very long way from its first iteration, but hopefully everybody enjoys this portion of the build. It is still minions. You just do some damage along with the minions. Yeah, you see right there, guys? Be really careful with minions with cold. They will mess you up. Hopefully you enjoy the build. And let me know down in the comments. I appreciate everybody that watched the build guide so far, and I will see you next time. Later, everybody.